Centerpiece. This is Evan Yvonne, your host. Okay, so I am continuing in Genesis 19 today. I've gone through a series of questions that the Lord asked me once I finished the other episode the other day that concerning Lot and his daughters. And I had a question to the Lord concerning Lot, because there was something that I noticed that he said that just kind of really intrigued me and just sent me on this kind of exploration, I guess, of the different dynamics that we can find ourselves in when our eyes are really open to how the Lord, his character, his ways, his paths. We can only dissect God's ways from hindsight, and based off of what he says. And even and more so from hindsight, by really reflecting. And I think that when God does difficult things, his way of caring for your soul, especially when he basically either allows something that is just doesn't make sense, or obviously there's information that's missing. God is looking, he's sovereign, he's looking at us in the earth through a whole nother lens, he is counseling himself, understanding his own full counsel, understanding in an omniscient sense all of the factors that are going into one situation, and making decisions and moving in the earth in ways that come into our present, but but really the decisions are being made from an eternal perspective, an eternal counsel. And not in the sense of psychic reading or even the new technologies that, can show people the future for other people or themselves and things of that sort. Not even in that way, because that's still what man can put their hands on. And at any time, God can rearrange those events. Because of those types of interferences. So he can come in and disrupt even that which is perhaps predicted by something other than the counsel of God. So within those thoughts, the human part of us, especially if you're not within the category of those who in the last days, your hearts grow hard because we become desensitized and we normalize a lot of things that, that God initially, holds to as wicked. The only thing most people come to the conclusion about what's wicked is when it comes to homosexuality, where there is complete wickedness and whole kinds of things that are happening in our earth, all types of things that are desensitized. It's also wicked to oppress people. It's also wicked to not take care of the poor, or to not make sure that others are prospering. There's wickedness, but there's things that we've normalized. And I I think that when you don't have a hardened heart, when death has not become just something that is normal and okay, death is supposed to evoke a lamentation, not just people who are close to you, but just for humanity itself, this understanding and knowing that things have gone severely awry when violence is taking place. Things, according to God's character and his nature, are completely off kilter and unaligned. And that to me is a heart of flesh, a heart that is still very sensitive and knows compassion, and not when it benefits us, but knows the depths of the pain and the weariness that can come to the soul when things are not, when things seem to be barreling over you, to overtake you. So we find ourselves at this place with Lot, where everybody pretty much knows the story. These angels show up because they have this outcry against the city is so great that it reaches the ears of God. God sends 2 angels to investigate and to determine and to decide, to basically judge the situation. And based off of their judgment, they have authority to destroy the city. So Abraham tries to intercede, which is the first picture that we see of God's compassion. Abraham is directly reflecting the compassion that God has. Yesterday, God told me I'm patient. He reminded me I'm patient because I don't want anyone to perish, even the wicked. God does not delight in the wicked perishing. He delights in the repentance, the turning of the way, the way that we saw Jonah with Nineveh. They were a wicked people, but God called them a great nation. And even though Jonah understood the severity of how and what kind of people that they were, when they understood that God was disappointed and that he had made a judgment against them, even the king, they repented. They put on sackcloth and ashes and fasted to honor and to show God that they didn't want that way more than they wanted him to not destroy them. So we get to this point where we see this first thought of compassion that Abraham has, and the compassion is interwoven within this intercession that he's willing to do to spare the city. Obviously, his nephew is there, Lot, and, Abraham is not at the place where he's like, oh, yeah, like finding pleasure in the fact that Lot has gone into a place and chosen an area after they separated that is failing, that is considered wicked. Lot could not see all of this. He only saw this great plain that was very lush and seemed to be, just a very fruitful place when he decided that that's where he was going to go and live. So we see that. And then these series of questions begin to come to me with the Lord. And I wanted to explore this with God. So this is what I'm sharing. So it's not really anything that, this is just a conversation that I'm having with the Lord, and I'm sharing it. So the first question that the Lord asked me is, did Lot lose his friends? And I replied, yes. And the Lord says, well, can what I allow be difficult for man? Yes, I reply. And then he says, well, talk about how I comfort the weary soul. And my thoughts on that is, how does God comfort the weary soul? Because we might skip past, we're conditioned to want the drama of a situation. And if we always continuously focus on the heightened part, the good part, the juicy part, the angels destroy the city, we forget that Lot was a man with a family. When the men came to violate and bring violence to the angels that Lot had welcomed into his home, we get a lot of context there. Because first of all, when the angels arrived to the city, Lot is sitting at the gate, which is synonymous with judge. The men would sit at the gates, and that is a form of, just kind of not only protecting what's inside on the other side of the gate, but, kind of judging who's coming and going. People pass by and you need to understand, like what's going on here. We need to decide what type of person this is coming into our community. And they would sit at the gates and judge. So he's there. The angels arrive, and Lot's kind of lessons that he's learned from Abram begin to show. Lot brings them, come into my house, wash your feet. I'm going to prepare a meal for you. This is a very extravagant welcome of these angels concerning, where he is. And he shows them hospitality, and extravagant hospitality at that, and welcomes them into his home, which is a righteous thing to do. And what was the right thing to do when it came to the angels? So we see that Lot has this way about him. And my question about why, when they showed up, he calls the men his brothers, I begin to just imagine that Lot has probably shown this type of hospitality to these people, hoping that this kindness that he could show, this hospitality that he could show, could turn them away. And obviously I'm adding context in. I'm just saying that this isn't a one-off reception or hosting way that Lot knows. It would have had to have been something where he was continuously exhibiting this type of hospitality even to those who are wicked. He calls them, when they come to the door, brothers, don't do a wicked thing like this. Don't try to bring my guests out of my house so that you can violate them. It's wicked. And that brings me to this space of, that's the thing that we do when those that we care about or love or have grown in affection for, we begin to remind them, no, that's not you. This is not what we do. We try to intercede. This was a beautiful, another example of this intercession that should just be embedded within the heart of those that say they love God. There is a genuine, natural, reactive intercession that, no, let's not do this. And so they barrel over that idea and then turn on him. This is a man who has called them brother. It takes a lot for me to call someone, hey sister, or hey brother, like that. I think logically my brain doesn't work that way, where I will cherish friendships and relationships that come close to me. But my brothers are my brothers and my sisters are my sisters. It's hard for me to imagine the spiritual sense of brothers. But Lot brings himself into a relationship with him, so I know that there has to be some sort of connection, which is why I asked the question of God, about him calling them brothers and that deep affection that he had, no different than the affection that Abram, who's trying to also intercede for the city, has for Lot. He has no connection with the other people, but his connection with the other people become part of him because of his relationship with Lot and his love for him. And it just shows this boundless love that even the wicked, there's a space to engraft them into what God's love is when you know God's love. So God shows his compassion through Lot, but then obviously they reject him and they continuously try to pursue this wicked plan that they have. The angels blind them, and then we get on to kind of like where I'm going to focus. Because God says to talk about how I comfort the weary soul. And I wanted to connect how this would be a weariness. This is a crisis. This is a crisis. If anyone had 2 angels show up to their house right now and specifically tell them, look, you need to leave here because we're going to destroy this whole neighborhood, most people are going to be hesitant. You're going to start thinking about all of the things that you have invested into your home. It wouldn't have been any different at that time. And I think it's difficult to identify with that because it doesn't reflect itself in the text. But there are very much regular human activities that are going on, just like there were human activities going on when Noah was building the ark. He was interceding to the people, preaching to them, saying that this is going to happen. They still were giving themselves in marriage. They were still doing the activities of life. So if 2 angels show up, your house, you have invested in it. This is your community. These are people, they have things wrong with them, but I've learned to live with them. God is saying, no, there's another thing that's about to happen. But he takes into consideration your humanness. He takes into consideration all of the things that should go through your heart when there is going to be a crisis shift. Something that is going to not only throw your soul, your mindset into you. This is knowing people one day, laughing with them, hanging out at the bar. The next day, all of them are gone. God takes all of this into consideration. He does not leave people to dysfunction and to mental health crises. God is not an author of that. He's not an author of understanding that I take into consideration the trauma. And I believe that this is really the context of even what I'm exploring, is that, yes, God can allow a traumatic thing to happen, but he has carefully orchestrated the care for that trauma. And this is going to really expound on that. So how does he comfort the weary soul? And I begin to reflect, and I put down, he becomes a sure anchor. That's the first thing. He becomes stability, protective like a husband. And that's my experience with that's my perspective of God. I'm a woman, so I'm going to see him in these ways. And he he becomes a husband, because a husband that is a true husband becomes this anchor. He becomes a protection. There becomes this, we don't have to worry about this, even though there's going to be the ups and downs of emotion, the ups and downs of, yes, the mentality or the mindset that this might produce in us. But God is, if we understand who God is, and we allow him to orchestrate, or we allow him to speak the orchestration of what he's going, how he's going to navigate us, it becomes the comfort that is needed for the weary soul. Because anything that's traumatic is going to make your soul weary. Even the strongest person, any type of trauma, any type of disaster, even though you go into modes that will be self-preservation, even that's a natural form of God counseling and comforting the weary soul. So basically, he shows us compassion. So one way that in the scriptures, in Genesis 19, it says, and they led them safely out of the city because of the Lord's compassion for them. He leads us to safety. Compassion, that's a comfort for the weary soul. He understands that that was a necessary thing. The angels didn't just tell them to leave, but they led them out. This was extravagant in the sense of how God stays with you. It just signifies this closeness. It signifies, I'm not going to let your hand go. Just come on. We're going to get through this. And that's a beautiful thing, in my opinion. The second thing is God will keep you moving. The angels, so that event where they were going to be violated happened at night. So obviously it's not wise to travel in the evening or at night when it's dark at that time. They didn't have street lights. So early the next morning, these angels, they're very focused on their mission and their assignment. They understand all of the accommodation that comes with them entering into this world. They have it all figured out. So early the next morning, they say, get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city. Run for your lives. Do not look back and do not stop anywhere on the plain. They kept Lot and his family moving, because what can happen overnight? You could just say, well, you know what? Maybe this isn't going to be the case. Maybe things will be different. The heart wants to reset, especially a compassionate heart. Those with a compassionate heart, we want to reset it. We are very easy to forgive. We're very easy to say, well, you know what? Maybe this time it could be different. But these angels are like, you know what? We understand. We understand the challenges and the handicap that can come with being a compassionate person or a compassionate soul. We're going to hurry them along, keep them moving. So that movement, that urgency of the movement, doesn't have to be something that's scary. It just becomes what is necessary, because you're just not equipped, or you don't have what it takes to really govern what is going on here. So, when heaven intercedes, yes, it could seem like a failure on your end. But it's not necessarily a failure, because what does God say? My strength is made perfect in your weakness. You could be a weak ruler. You could be a weak judge. And that's going to translate to other people as something that, oh, I can walk over them, which is what these people in the city did. Lot was a true judge. He was truly a righteous man living among heathens. He was greater than them, which is why God had compassion on him. He was more significant than him, but their activities, their wickedness overpowered Lot's ability to rule and to effectively influence them. And it can happen. And I think that it becomes a failure to us personally and a failure to those who want to see you not succeed anyway. But to God, it is it's a breath of fresh air to know that to God, He isn't looking at you like a failure. He's looking at you as someone who is consistently doing what you were taught in Him. And He will work out the hard parts. He will come Himself to do the hard parts. Who knows? Lot could have been among the ones crying out against the city. But just because you are crying out about this is just not right, doesn't mean that you don't have some sort of connection and love. Because even when God, He sends both rain on the wicked and the righteous. He blesses both the wicked and the righteous. So there's these dynamics, to God's nature and to His character and the things that we inherit from Him and how we maneuver through it. But His decisions are firm and just and right. So He keeps us moving. He keeps us moving. Get up. Take your family and get away from here. The last thing that I wrote was, God will direct you to the best location. And this is an interesting point because Lot is given direction. The angels say, flee to the mountains or you will be swept away. They specifically said the mountains. What I don't like about Lot at this point is that he says he decides he knows different. He understands, you guys have shown me great compassion. You have shown me great kindness. You're helping us, but I can't go to the mountains or I will die. Why would they send him this interception of fear? And I think it's what happens naturally in the heat of crisis, is that this reasoning comes in. Where would he get this reasoning that they would direct him to go to the mountains to kill him? It's the same thing the Israelites did when God led them out of Egypt into the wilderness, and they blamed Moses, saying, God, why did you lead us out here? God, you led us out here so that y'all could take us away from being slaves and then kill us here in the wilderness. What this reasoning is strange, but it's real. It happens. I've been there before. I've done it. So God will direct you to a specific place. Now Lot says, well, no, there's a city that's nearby. There's a small little city that's nearby called Zoar. I want to go there. So the angels, they say, well, go ahead. We'll wait for you to get there, but don't look back. Run for your life and don't look back. He made a wrong decision. Again, he did exactly what he did when Abraham said, we need to separate. Pick whatever land that you want to live in, and I'll go the other way. The angels told Lot to go to the mountain. And this is what I assess and what I believe is why they wanted him to go to a mountain. One thing I know about trouble, crisis, and like I said at the beginning of this, reflecting on what what God is doing, why he's making certain decisions or allowing certain things when it pertains to your life. And you're really just left in the space of just listening to him and doing what he says. And there's really no, detailed plan given to you, even though God knows all the details of it. But I think the perspective of the mountain would have helped Lot to look down upon the plains and understand, understanding why this had to happen. I think God wanted to bring Lot up, elevate him to a place and significantly where he could look down upon it like he was able to look down upon it, and how heaven was able to look down upon it. Give him a taste of the perspective. And I think that would have kept him sober-minded. I think it would have kept his heart aligned with this godly, how to reign as a God, in the sense of God making you to be a head of a family or to be a head of a city, a judge. How do you judge? Lot's failure was in his judgment. And if he would have went to that mountain, like they said, he would have saw the whole situation from a different perspective, and likely his wife wouldn't have looked back. It's easy to look back when you're on flat land because your perspective isn't really, you're not really climbing. You're really trying to make sure that you are not going to be overwhelmed by what's behind you. So there's this kind of fear that is pursuing you, even though you have been assured that you will make it to the place that you're running to. But it's difficult not to do that in the plains. It's difficult to not be complacent in the plains. It's difficult to not reflect and want to go back in the plains because you're in it. You're in it. There are no elevated points in a plain. It's all one level ground. So the mountain represents a whole nother perspective that Lot rejected when the angels were telling him what was right and what was good. So in that case, God still allowed him to reject his own therapy. It would have been very therapeutic. It would have been very freeing. It would have not caused the trauma to reach into the spaces where we see it turns detrimental, because he ends up being seduced and raped by his own daughters. This iniquity. This scripture would have, this Bible story would have gone a whole nother way if Lot would have listened. And I know that's true because what's beautiful is Abram. What did he do? What did he do? Abram returns to the place. He's overlooking. This whole horrific scene happens throughout the day and overnight. They wake up in the morning, takes them a whole day to run to the place. By the time that the night comes, that's when the city's destroyed. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. This is the place where God had him looking over the city. This is the place where and God had decided to tell him and share with him that he was going to destroy it. This is the place where Abraham interceded. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the land of the plain, and he saw the smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that destroyed the cities where he had lived. I know his perspective would have been different if Lot would have followed the directions of the angels. But Abraham inherits the blessing of being able to see from the high place what was going on in the plain or in the valley. Well, really the plain. It's not called a valley, so I'm not going to try to turn it into one. It's a plain, a flat land. So beautiful. And that's how God takes care of the weary soul. Abraham trusted and knew that God helped him, helped Lot. We don't see Abraham spiraling into a crisis or feeling rejected. God has carefully orchestrated the care of this family, even though they were separate. Lot's final decision to not do what the angel said and to make his own plan basically is what it was his desire, and it brought detriment to him. So that's it. And I pray that this is information that is heard in the spirit. I pray that it is a blessing to the soul, especially if the soul is weary. Get in the space where you can find and see and experience the compassion of God. From there, when you realize that God is compassionate towards you, he can direct you, keep you moving, give you the mission or assignment or activity that stirs up your faith and brings you to the place where now you can begin to get some footing over the grief or over the happenings of the events. Some people's lives are just steeped in turmoil, and not necessarily because of anything that they've done. It could be the result of people making decisions, bad leadership, all kinds of things bring turmoil into lives. But God will keep you moving because he's a compassionate God. And God will direct you to a specific location. He will give you the space to build the altar, to get to the mindset of thankfulness and gratefulness, to the perspective where you're not just being bombarded by what you're in, but for a moment, you're in the mountainous area where you can look down upon and ponder and come into agreement with, even though this is hard, God's way was right. God's way was right. You got to get to the place of reflection when it comes to crisis and trauma, and not understanding why God allows what he allows and why he makes decisions about how he makes decisions. He is a good God, and he will reason with you, and he will hear you and take in every single just challenge that you're having with coming into grips or accepting what has to happen sometimes. He's a good God. So may these things be true in your life. May they overtake you. May the compassion of God be a well, rise up like a well in your heart, a understanding and perspective. May it come, a new perspective. through reflection, through righteous, holy reflection. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.